Travel Squad podcast.
We're four friends that grew up together in the same small town.
We followed each other to San Diego, and now we adventure the world together.
One passport stamp at a time.
We're here to share our travel stories and inspire you to go on your own adventures.
Even if it starts with your own backyard. I'm Jamal.
Brittany,
Kim,
And I'm Dana.
and we're the Travel Squad podcast.
So grab your tickets.
Your passport.
And don't forget your travel insurance.
And prepare for takeoff. Hello, fellow travelers. Welcome to episode 14 of the Travel Squad podcast. Get ready for another guided tour exploring the Adriatic Coast today.
Yeah, we're so excited to be together because we haven't recorded in a month. They've been gone on this trip and we've been doing our own thing. And so we're so excited to hear about this trip.
Yeah, I'm excited to get back into the groove of things. And in this episode, we're going to be taking you with us from Albania to Montenegro, Croatia, before ending our travels in Slovenia, and hopefully giving you guys inside tips and obviously discussing our day-to-day of our trip.
Yes, and this is the first time that Kim and I are hearing about this trip. I personally picked up Jamal and Brittany from the airport, and they wouldn't tell me anything because we wanted it all to be captured on the podcast so you can hear our authentic reactions to the craziness of their trip.
So this trip was a guided tour, and we chose it because it had the most bang for your buck. There is no advanced railway system in this part of the Adriatic Coast or in Europe. You know, it's very easy to get from France to Italy and to other countries, but to get to Croatia to Albania, it's much more difficult. So that was one of the reasons why we picked a guided tour. The tour also included our flights, transportation, entrance fees into activities or national parks, our hotels, and some meals.
So you guys just got back from this trip. It was about 10 days, right?
It was technically a 12-day trip, but
12
two
days.
of those days
Were
are
travel.
traveling. And so realistically 10 of activities, but we extended a day to do Venice on our own because Venice wasn't part of the guided tour. We were actually ending in Slovenia. However, the largest international airport close to that area where they have kind of like direct flights back to the States was Venice. So Brittany and I said, well, if we're going to be in Venice, why are we not just going to spend a day there ourselves? So we opted to do that.
Might as well. So for the whole 12 days, what are the must-know tips for this kind of a trip?
Okay, so the biggest one is we went to several different countries. We hit 5 altogether. And so it's really good to know that a lot of these countries use different currencies. So be mindful of the logistics before you book a trip like this. For example, Albania used the lek. And once you exchange money to lek, you cannot exchange it back to US dollars or euros. They will not exchange money back. So once you have it in lek, you can only then spend it.
Well, what about like once you come back to the United States?
No,
where
it's
it's just,
no one wants that currency.
No one wants that currency.
oh, wow.
It's not powerful enough for them to want to give it back to dollars or euros or anything like that.
So you have to be very mindful of how much you either pull from the ATM or how much you exchange in person because they will not take it back.
Well, the first thing I thought was, is Albania in debt if they don't want to give the money back?
No, it's just, they're their own currency, and the major currencies in Europe is obviously like the euro, and they're a small country in comparison to other countries in Europe that don't use the euro, such as England using the pound, or some of the Scandinavian countries that use their own currency and not the euro. So since they have a little bit more power and prestige, their currency is easier to change. But Albania,
That's an interesting one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Croatia uses the kuna, and supposedly they're supposed to change to the euro soon, but we didn't go directly from Albania to Croatia. We went to Montenegro first, which uses the euro. So we were switching back and forth between currencies. Montenegro, Slovenia, and Italy all use the euro. So it was kind of a back and forth between all of the currencies that we were using the entire time that we were there.
Will Croatia accept euros?
No.
Gotcha.
Overall, no.
One of the places we were at listed prices in euros, but for the most part, in just a lot of general transactions, no, they're not accepting it. But they are part of the European Union, so they are going to be switching to the euro soon. They just haven't yet. So they still have their own currency. But to answer a question, Kim, of one of the must-knows. So The last time Brittany and I were in Europe was in September of 2017, obviously minus this trip right here. And one thing that we always do when we go to other countries and need foreign currency is I don't exchange it here and then take it with me. I pull money from the ATM because the ATM gives you an even exchange rate. Yes, you have ATM fees, but I usually get my bank to reverse them. So it costs me usually nothing in terms of trading money in.
You said something really interesting right there. Your bank usually reverses them.
He asks for it.
So take us through your process for getting this travel fee removed from your account.
I'm in my bank quite often, so I don't want to toot my own horn, but I am a friendly person. I strike a conversation with anybody. So even like the tellers who I'm going to be seeing on a regular basis, I like to have a friendly relation with them. So just when I go in, I'm obviously always asking how they're doing. It's not just like a general transaction. So I actually strike general conversations with them all the time. So when I come back from a trip, I usually ask them, hey, I have an ATM fee. It was from out of country. Is there any way that we can potentially get a courtesy reversal of the fee? And they'll say, oh, well, let me see what I could do, and they'll put in a request, and 95% of the time it's always been reversed for me.
Nice.
You just gotta ask. But before you got onto that though, what I was gonna say, yes, I usually pull money from the ATMs. So the last time we were there, they didn't have these Euronet ATMs now. These are like private ATMs, not from banks. And so when we were in the airport in Rome before we went to Albania, that my plan was, okay, I'm going to pull out euros from here and then just exchange the euros to the local currency as opposed to having multiple ATM withdrawals in Albania or Croatia since they have their own currency, whereas everywhere else we were going was going to be using the euro. And I put in my card into a Euronet one, didn't think anything of it. I thought it was just a normal ATM. And then they were going to charge me a 12% surcharge fee. And they're private, ATMs, so they're not banks. You can't talk to anybody to potentially get that reversed. So one thing I want to say to anybody now going to Europe is do not use a Euronet ATM. Beyond normal fees, they charge you a surcharge of 12% to use the ATM.
Out of the 5 countries that you went to, which would you say that you got the best exchange rate, or like your money went the farthest? Like, I can't believe how cheap this country is.
I would say Albania.
Yeah, Albania was definitely very cheap. And because it's the farthest south on the Adriatic coast, they were saying the farther north that you get, closer you get to Italy, the more European prices you'll see.
Wow, gotcha. That goes a long way.
Yeah, and they have their, random currency and whatnot. Obviously, we were in a touristy hotel in the center of downtown. So, a little bit of markup because of that. But just in general, I would say definitely Albania was the cheapest country where your money's going to go a long way. And Montenegro. I would say Montenegro just as well.
So another tip was water was safe to drink from every tap except for Albania. You couldn't drink the water in Albania. You had to go out and purchase water bottles. But everywhere else, it was safe to drink the water.
And it was okay. Was it in Albania that you could brush your teeth with the water?
Yes. You could brush your teeth, shower, but you could not just physically drink the water.
So when you're going to the supermarkets to buy water in Albania, did you buy the Mas Grande?
No, we did not.
Yeah.
Well, we weren't there that long, so we just bought 1 liter size bottles for each of us. And obviously on the tour, they give us bottled waters each day as part of the tour, like when you're on it doing activities. So we have that. But, when we're in our hotel room or anything like that, obviously we have the bottles.
And if you're wondering what the Mas Grande was, it's episode 1 in Mexico City. Go back and listen to it. It's a good one.
What else do we need to know about this?
So I was expecting, okay, we're on the Adriatic coast for the entire time. How different, and all of these are small countries, how different could the weather be in all of them? And I did look up the weather and it seemed to be pretty hot in every single place, but different weather, different terrain. Be sure to pack for different climates because the weather in Albania was very, very hot. And in Slovenia, it was cold. It was much colder.
Your guys' outfits were on point in your pictures.
Thank you.
I love them. Yeah, Jamal and your t-shirts.
Well, no, not the t-shirts, my button-ups.
There you
Yeah,
go.
you wore a button up every day, and then your little cold weather clothes. You guys were looking so cute.
And so what we didn't expect was mosquitoes. So we did not pack mosquito repellent. And so we got torn up.
That happens to me on every trip I take, because in San Diego, we don't have mosquitoes.
Right.
And you forget how brutal they are.
You forget, and not only that, even in Woodland, our hometown, obviously, yes, they're there, but I still don't even remember them being as prevalent any time of the year as it was when we were in Europe. I was like shocked by it. Like we were waking up each day with bites all over the place.
Yeah.
Ooh. I mean, I remember even like being in Zimbabwe and they had the mosquito nets. So when you go to bed, you don't get bitten by the mosquitoes, but I didn't even see any mosquitoes.
Right.
Wow. So
They're along the Adriatic Coast, let me tell you that.
that's where they're
It's
at.
confirmed.
Yeah, so definitely bring some bug repellent. I mean, if you're thinking going to Europe and you think like, oh, I'm not going to need mosquitoes repellent or there's not going to be any, you'd be very wrong like we were.
Question for you guys. What's their coffee like?
Interestingly enough, there's a lot of Italian influence on that side because the Adriatic Coast, just so people are aware, is actually part of the Mediterranean Sea. It's just a little inlet of the Mediterranean. So if you just imagine the bootleg of Italy coming down, you would be looking at Eastern Italy all the way, obviously, to Albania, Montenegro, Croatia, which are on the coast. So it's just a small little inlet up of the Mediterranean. And since it's so close to Italy, if you actually get coffee from a machine, it's either going to be an espresso, cappuccino, latte. Those are delicious. But if you're just looking for black coffee or just regular coffee with cream, they use like the Nescafe powdered stuff, which really took me aback.
Wow.
Yeah.
In almost every single country we went to. Out of
Powdered
like the
coffee.
Like if you would
Yes.
think just like brewed coffee, that's not happening. You have to get it like as an espresso or cappuccino if you want like real coffee.
Do they have Starbucks?
we didn't come across one
Really?
Starbucks in our
Interesting.
entire trip.
How about like any kind of American influence stuff, like McDonald's or?
Yes, we did see a McDonald's, but
Did you go to it?
No, very far and few between on the fast food chains that are here in America.
I feel like we only saw 2 McDonald's.
One Burger King.
Yeah, 1 Burger King, and one of the 2 McDonald's was in Venice and the Burger King was in Venice. And that's another reason why we were excited about this trip is we knew that this area of Europe isn't as westernized as Western Europe, if you will. So it's kind of a little bit more authentic in their culture and everything like that without a lot of kind of Western influence.
Cool. Well, before we get into the trip, anything else that we must know?
Yes, there is one last thing. When you are traveling in general, you should bring some packed toilet paper because we went through so many gas stations that were out of toilet paper. I even came across a squatty potty, which
2.
I was not
Wow.
expecting.
2 squatty potties.
Yeah, 2.
Did you use one?
Yeah, it was in the same country, but I wasn't. It
What
took
country?
me off. It was Montenegro. It really took me off guard, and I was not prepared. And so I wish I had known that 1, we would come across a squatty potty, and 2, that I would also need my own toilet paper in that, and also in some of the gas stations we came across.
But did you like grab a shitload of toilet paper from your hotel and like make your own little travel TP bag after that?
After that, yes.
You know, we can't get through one episode without talking about the bathroom. So,
They're vitally important to your vacation.
So important.
well, let's get into the vacation. I want to hear about it.
Yeah. So, I mean, day 1, obviously, we did some traveling with our guided tour. The flight package was San Diego to Atlanta, Atlanta to Rome, Rome to Albania. So by the time we landed in Albania, we lost a day, and then it was mid-afternoon at that point. So the first day we just got picked up with pretty much everybody who was on our tour, and they took us to the hotel, gave us a little bit of downtime before we had our orientation meeting, kind of where we meet everybody who's part of the tour, meet our tour guide, and then we had our group dinner at the hotel. That dinner was included that night, and it was actually really, really delicious. They cooked us a nice veal chop. It was pretty good.
Veal.
It was really good.
Ew.
There was also a vegetarian
Ew.
option.
Veal's delicious.
And so we had probably spent about 24 hours traveling. So we really were exhausted when we got to Albania. So that was just pretty much a mellow day. But day 2, we started the day with a city tour of Albania. And I'm not like a history person because I feel like it's a lot of memorization. But I did learn a lot about the Albanian history. And we started our day at a place called Skanderberg Square, which is kind of in the middle of Tirana, which is
The capital,
the
yes.
capital of Albania. And Albania is actually a Muslim country. Did you guys know that?
I did not.
I don't know if I knew it, but I also don't feel like I'm surprised when you say that.
It's a Muslim majority country. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so this country was under communism for a long time. And so because of that, they built atomic bunkers all around the city. So they've actually turned an atomic bunker into a museum, but you can still see them throughout the city.
So they were afraid of atomic bombs and they built bunkers?
Well, it wasn't even really for the citizens. It was the communist leaders. They were afraid of kind of some sort of retaliatory attack, just because they were communists. They aligned with Russia, potentially coming from the United States or other European non-communist countries. So the leaders themselves would build bunkers, and they would only fit like 5 to 10 people. But there is a ton of them all around the main downtown area, and even as we were driving kind of in the outskirts and the villages, you can actually see little domes where they built them as the actual
really cool.
bunkers. Yeah.
That's fascinating. But by the time it goes off, it's too late to go take shelter.
Well, if you know it's coming.
Yeah, when one bomb hits, other bombs could come right after.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and you got to think like when they built these two, like the amount of power in the bombs aren't as what they are now. You know what I mean? So the type of fallout, not that it wasn't severe, but it's not like it is now. But nonetheless, they were built just like people here in the States built little bunkers under their homes. The communist leaders built themselves. So even in the middle of downtown, you can see, and like Brittany said, they had a museum. So you could go into an entrance and kind of walk underground, and it had its own separate exit. It was really,
Did
really
you guys
neat.
go in?
We went into the entrance. We didn't go through the entire museum, but the entrance is separate from the exit. So there's 2 ways to enter the bunker if needed. So in that square around that area, we could see the atomic bunker. We also saw a mosque, and then there was also a natural history museum there as well.
It was a national history museum, not natural history.
Oh, I'm
museum.
sorry.
Yeah.
National history.
So it was Albania's history museum, like in the big square that they have. And I found it to be really interesting. Before their communist times, they only had one monarch. He was elected president or prime minister and declared himself king. So they have a little section in there where they talk about the monarchy of Albania, which I found to be quite interesting, if you will. But it was,
I'm going to be king.
But that place that Brittany said we went, which was Skanderberg Square, it's named after like their national hero. Obviously, we're talking well before the 1900s. He was a general of sorts, but I mean, we're talking, several hundred years back, right? But the square that it's named after, it wasn't used to be called that. I forgot what they said it was called, but instead of a statue of Skanderberg, they had a big statue of Joseph Stalin, because it was communist. So they've since torn that down after the fall of communism. Interestingly enough, they have that statue in the back of a building. So if you saw any of our Instagram photos that we posted, Brittany posted one of her standing next to the torn down statue of Stalin, just hiding in the back.
Interesting.
How was the food in Albania? I have no idea what Albania food is like.
I felt like there was like goulashes and a lot of like stews.
I forgot what it was called, but again, a lot of Italian influence in that region. So believe it or not, there was even a lot of like pizza, pasta, but kind of more ethnic local cuisine. The day of our city tour, dinner was not included. So we did dinner on our own. We ate at our hotel because we saw their menu and it looked quite delicious, but we got something that was specifically an Albanian dish. I forgot what it was called, but it was a lamb dish that had rice, cooked kind of like in a yogurt sauce. It was actually really, really delicious. But like she said, I wouldn't equate kind of like a yogurt sauce meal to be like a stew, but a lot of it's like kind of stews, goulashes, things like that is what you could say is more ethnic cuisine for them.
Interesting.
Also, walking back to our hotel, there was a park, and in the park, there was a piece of the Berlin Wall that was gifted to the Albanians after they came out of communism.
And
Very cool.
After the tearing down of the Berlin Wall, it's standing in front of another bunker. So they have like a city park that was in front of our hotel, and then they have like a little piece of the Berlin Wall, and then that's standing in front of another nuclear bunker for one of the communist leader high-ups.
Interesting. I got to hear about the massages because Brittany texted me several times while you guys were on this trip talking about all these massages that she's getting. So I've got to hear it. Was it...
Well, this time, without interrupting though, Kim, that's where it ties back to what Zaina was saying was, where does your money go the furthest? It actually went the furthest in Albania. So the massages were very, very cheap. So Brittany and I both partook in a massage out there.
Tell me
Really
this.
nice.
Was it better or worse than the Peru massage?
It was better than the Peru massage. It was a 60-minute Swedish massage, and we actually got it at the same price for a couple. We were expecting to be separated, and we weren't. It was like a couple's massage. We were in the same room. They gave us detox water to start. Then they gave the 60-minute massage, and then afterwards, they told us to get dressed in robes, and they gave us a tea to enjoy at the very end.
It was a legit spa within our hotel.
And it was only $45 per person.
Wow, that is a steal.
It is.
So we pulled out a little too much lek, so we were sure to pay for our massages with that.
Yeah, when we found out that we didn't really need that much lek because most of our meals were going to be included with the tour, we were like, oh crap, what are we going to do with this? Well, I guess we're going to use this to pay for the massages.
Wonderful. Everything works out for a reason.
Yeah. And so after the massages, we had dinner at the hotel. Like Jamal said, we had some authentic Albanian cuisine. And then we went out for dessert. I had been looking for a dessert place, and I had found one online. And our server that night, she said, do you want dessert here? And we said, no, we're actually going out to dessert. And she said, I actually hope you guys go to D'Angelo because it's the best place. And that was the place that had been pulled up. So we did go there.
And what did you get?
Chocolate covered waffle.
Chocolate covered waffle.
Yes.
It was delicious.
I remember
really delicious.
When I was in Belgium, I ate a shitload of chocolate covered waffles, and they were so good. They even made cookie chocolate covered waffles.
I believe it.
Sounds amazing.
We paid like $1.50 for a chocolate covered waffle, like a full size waffle too. It was really good.
Amazing.
Yeah, and it had ice cream on top.
But other than that, we really didn't do too much in Albania except for see Tirana, again, which is the capital. So after that day, the next day we woke up and we were going to be going on to Montenegro.
Question before we get too far into this.
Yes.
I know that Gate1 usually provides a breakfast buffet at every hotel that they put you up at. How was Albania's breakfast buffet?
The best one.
Really?
I would say second best. I would give Dubrovnik number one.
Okay. I mean, debatable, but I did think that the breakfast buffet was really good in Albania.
And they had
number two would
muesli,
shock
right?
me.
Yes.
What else did they have? Walk us
had-
through the buffet
Oh my
spread,
God.
please.
Okay, so
I got videos.
You walk in and there's like a toaster and a bread basket. Then you go down the line and then there's cold meats and cheeses. Then you can even get a cold salad if you want. If you go to the other side, it's all of your hot stuff. So your bacon, your sausages, your eggs, your pancakes, your potatoes.
Pancake?
They had an omelet station.
They had an omelet station.
Sounds very American.
And
Yes.
this is where I learned that the coffee was shit, because the first day I ordered just a regular coffee, and when it came, I drank it. I was like, man, this isn't even that good. It tastes like powdered mix. And Brittany's like, no, it definitely is. And then the table next to us, we saw them get really nice, real craft lattes and cappuccinos. So then I asked her server, I was like, what's that? It's like, oh, it's the latte. So we knew the next day to get that. And since then we knew like, okay, this is how you have to branch out at all the other places, was to get latte or a cappuccino or an espresso.
Good to know.
Makes me want a coffee so bad.
And then to round out the breakfast buffet, there was a whole fruit station as well. They had whole fruits, they had cut fruits, they had yogurt, they had like jams to put on top, honeys. So it was a whole full.
Sounds really good.
Interestingly enough, like Brittany said, it was her number one. It was my number two, but Albania's breakfast buffet at the hotel really surprised. As a matter of fact, honestly, the hotel we were at in Albania might have been even the best.
It was
too.
really nice.
This makes me want to go on a Gate1 tour just to go to a buffet spread.
I love Gate1.
They were good there. I mean, we'll talk later on which one I think was just kind of I didn't hate it. It just, compared to other Gate1s, it wasn't special. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
But like I said, minus the breakfast buffet and everything else in Albania, we didn't do too much other than in Tirana. So then we headed on out to Montenegro. But before we went to Montenegro, we had one last stop in Albania, which was kind of right on the border, where they gave us a little stop to have lunch, where Brittany and I actually had our first pizza along the way.
How was it?
It was okay. It was okay.
Okay?
There was nothing
Just okay.
special about it.
But it only cost $5 for a big pizza pie. So
For
I
an
mean, you can't really
entire,
complain.
for both of us, it cost $5 for lunch.
Are we talking like Costco size?
A little smaller than that.
A little
But
smaller.
Still, that's really good.
Yeah, for $5. So
yeah.
like I said, money goes a long way in Albania.
One other interesting fact is, did you guys know Mother Teresa is from Albania?
Oh, no shit.
Yes, there were statues of Mother Teresa all over the country. And in Shkodra,
Shkodra.
Shkodra.
That was the last city in Albania, like right at the border that we went to.
so in Shkodra, there was a statue of her standing kind of like in the middle square that you can go up and take your picture with her if you wanted.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah, we really didn't do much there. Like I said, it was a stop really for lunch. They had a couple like streets that had bazaars on them, if you will, with kind of shopping and whatnot. So just kind of more a little break, nothing that we really did. No tour was included while we were there. Again, just a stop. But then we crossed the border into Montenegro, and we're traveling by bus on the tour. So this was actually the longest border crossing that we had to wait at. We got lucky with the other ones, but this one took quite a while to cross.
We were almost there for 2 hours, I think, crossing the border.
How many people were on the tour?
37.
Okay, so that's not too bad, but yeah, okay.
But it wasn't even like it took so long once we got off the bus or looking at passports or anything. Just the line, it took a really, really long time because Albania is not part of the European Union. Montenegro is not even part of the European Union. So they have like no agreement. So you have to go through like customs and border checking and things like that when you go through. Yeah.
So like basically you walk over the border and the bus drives through and then he picks you up on the other side?
It's not like that at all.
Not like we did in Africa. No.
Not like we did in Africa. So they would collect all of our passports. And then I think at the first one, they said we were okay.
Yeah,
so wait,
because
what do you mean? Like they're getting on the bus?
Yeah.
Okay,
So because Albania's people, since we're leaving Albania, they need to mark us as leaving. So their customs guy came onto the bus, grabbed our passports, took it for a long time, did whatever they needed to do, gave it back. But that's just Albania. Then we have to give it to
Montenegro as well.
So then they got to scan it through. And our tour guide was telling us it just really depends on who you catch and what day. Sometimes they want you to come out. Sometimes they'll just take your passports and be fine. If they see that the majority of people are Americans, it's okay. But if they see that it's like a European tour, they're more inclined to have you get off. But it just really depends on the day.
So, and I'm so sorry for asking so many questions. It's just fascinating.
No, yeah.
Like when the guy comes on to the bus and takes your passports, is your bus in line to cross, or at this point do you guys like have to park to the side?
No, we're in line. And that's what takes so long is because there's a lot of different tour guides that are going through. So they're doing this for every single bus. So if there's a bus in front of us or a bus behind us, this is what's causing all of this traffic.
And like I said, I mean, our experience could be completely different from somebody else doing it. It just depends on the day and who you get.
Fascinating.
So we made our way to Montenegro, and we actually were going to a mountainous resort town called Kolasin, which was actually really, really nice. It was high up in the mountains, really clean air, beautiful. But along the way, both Brittany and I were pleasantly surprised with how beautiful Montenegro was. Like I wasn't expecting it. So green.
What kind of green?
Yeah,
green.
So green. A lot of mountain gorges.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
A lot of trees.
A lot of trees. After being in Tirana, and it was so hot in Tirana, when we got to Montenegro, the weather changed a little bit and the scenery was just undeniably beautiful. It was so nice.
Yeah, really mountainous and kind of a lot of like mountain gorges. So the road that we were driving to get to the town of Kolasin where we were going, it follows a cliff gorge. And so you can just kind of see over, really beautiful. But before we got to the mountain resort town that we were going to be sleeping at, they stopped us at the Morocco Monastery, which is actually the largest medieval Orthodox monument that's still in Montenegro. And it's been an active monastery since the year 1252.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's like 800 years old.
Did it look medieval?
When you went inside of the little church or chapel that they had there, it definitely did. But in terms of the actual building of the monastery itself, not so much. It's a small little one because it's in a remote mountainous town. It's not like it was in a big city, so it's relatively small. But when you went into the chapel, you could see the paintings, and the paintings definitely looked medieval.
That's cool.
And this is where I came across my first squatty potty experience.
Take us through. Where were you? How were you feeling?
So we were at the monastery, and Montenegro, it fooled me, right? Because we're there. It's a beautiful tourist destination. And our bus parks, and you have to walk down this long road leading up to this monastery. And it's beautiful. You can see the monastery in the background. And behind the monastery are all of the mountains. So it's just a perfect backdrop. So I'm like, all right, I got to pee before we head on to the hotel. So I go to use the bathroom, and I walk in, and there's a ton of mosquitoes, number one, inside the bathroom. Ooh. And two, I have to squat, and there's no toilet paper.
Oh.
So
3 strikes.
I was like, oh man, this is rough.
In all fairness, this place was built in 1252, huh?
I can handle the squat, but like no toilet paper and mosquitoes just swarming all around you. Oof.
I was like, okay. How much do I really like Montenegro? Just kidding. I like my Montenegro. But I just wasn't expecting it. So we left the monastery, and I kind of forgot about the squatty potty. We end up going to Kolasin, which is where we stayed for the night, which this hotel, most Gate1 tours do get really nice hotels, and the hotel was beautiful. It was gorgeous. I think I posted the hotel on my Instagram, but they didn't have AC because it's located in the mountains and it's not supposed to get hot.
But it was hot the day you were there.
It was hot, and so
that always happens.
It was warmer, but they have windows that can open, obviously, and they give you a fan inside, but our windows didn't open enough to get like a really big breeze. So you step outside, it's beautiful. It wasn't like hot, but just because it's a building and it's going to warm up, it definitely got warm for sure.
Well, do you have screen on the windows?
No.
Mosquitoes were coming in.
So I don't remember getting bit this day, but one of our tour mates, they had the windows open, and he said he got torn up that night. Just keep that in mind. Mosquitoes are in Montenegro.
But like Brittany said too, this hotel was really nice. Like I said, it's in a mountainous resort town. So the hotel itself was really nice. It had a really rustic, mountainous feel to it, but in a good way when I say rustic. On top of that, it was also like a little mini spa. It's the largest indoor pool I've ever seen of any hotel I've stayed at. Seriously, like Olympic
Did you swim
size.
in it?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, I went into the hot tub also, but Brittany got a massage. We were both going to get massages there because, again, they also had a spa. So we're like, okay, they're cheap. Let's do some more massages. So we go down to schedule it, and then they tell us, and we were hoping to do it kind of at the same time because we were on a time constraint because it was for the next day after we got back from tour. Then they have the dinner. We're supposed to wake up early. So they said, we can do one at this time and then the other at the next time. We're like, well, we can't do it at the same time. There's not 2 openings. They're like, there's only one masseuse. So I tell Brittany, I'm like, all right, well, you can have the massage because Brittany just loves massages. And they had a Turkish bath, like steam room, as well as a sauna. So I decided, all right, well, where are you getting the massage? I will actually do those. So I did that.
Okay, I have a couple questions here. How much was the massage?
So I just got a 30-minute back, neck, and shoulder massage, and we were in Montenegro, so we went up the coast a little bit. So for that, I believe it was 35 euros.
Montenegro's on the euro, even though they're not part of the European Union.
Okay, and then what's a Turkish bath? I've heard it. I don't know exactly.
Equate it to kind of like a steam room, but beyond it just being...
Big steam room?
It was
large?
It was quite large, and on top of that, it was really interesting. I've been in a couple, and both of them have done the same thing, so I don't know if it's just like an aesthetic look or if it just really needs to have it, but the roof is lit up and they have like a fluorescent kind of like moon and lights with stars that were in there. It was really, really interesting. But if you equate it to a sauna where it's hot but it's dry, a steam room, it's hot but obviously there's steam, so it's like humid and wet in there.
Okay, and are there a bunch of naked men walking around?
There was not, but funny that you should mention that because we forgot to mention when we were in Albania. I want to circle back around to this. They also had a sauna that we went into, and
together,
it was like a unisex. Right. Yeah. And then there was a dude just...
It was a unisex sauna.
Rocking it naked in there.
And so when we went to tour... we went to tour the hotel, and so we were checking out the sauna, and there was like a picture of like a man and woman wearing a bathing suit. So Jamal and I go downstairs in our bathing suits.
Well, the sign even said you must have bathing suit or towel on. It did say that.
It did say that. So after our massage, we're like, okay, we're all relaxed. Let's go get in the sauna together. And we had worn our bathing suits down to the massage area with other clothes on top, of course. And we get into the sauna room, and there's a nude man, European man, with his dick hanging out. And I was like, I opened up the door and I was like, oh, I'm so sorry.
He didn't really flinch
and he
at all,
didn't even care.
Wow.
And then he gets back into the sauna, and Jamal and I get back into the sauna, and he is just chilling nude in there.
He not only
Was it big?
Average, not big.
No, it wasn't.
Was it flaccid?
Oh, his dick?
Yeah.
Yes, it was flaccid.
No, he just had a raging boner in the sauna.
He saw Jamal and he just got erect.
Oh my God, weird things happening.
But no, he was just chilling. He was just laying back, like not.
And
even
his
sitting.
hands were up behind his head.
Oh my God.
Did you like feel inspired, Jamal, and rip your fucking shorts off?
Absolutely not.
That's what Brittany did text me about this, and I said, well, did you get naked?
No, I didn't. I didn't get naked. So what was really nice is in Albania, we did get to work out, but in other countries, the gyms didn't open early enough for us to take advantage of them. So Jamal and I kind of would say, let's go on an early morning walk around the cities. And so in Kolasin, we did get to go on early morning walks.
It was nice and cold, like a good brisk morning walk in the cold. It was
Nice.
really, really nice. Yeah.
So day 4, it was a really, really beautiful day. We had a local guide in Montenegro, and we went to 2 national parks. The first one was called Biogradska National Park, and it's one of the last virgin forests in Europe and home to glacial lakes, meaning glaciers have melted and have formed lakes.
Oh, wow.
It was a really pretty lake. They even had like a dock, some rowboats that were out there, really, really picturesque. But we didn't spend too much time there because we were going to another national
Yeah,
park.
how
that day.
long did Gate 1 allow you guys to stay there?
They gave us 45 minutes.
45 minutes.
Oh, that's not long.
I just gathered that it was long enough to get the Instagram-worthy pictures that you posted.
Yes, pretty much.
Lot of good pictures.
We were the youngest people on our tour by far, so every time we got on a stop, we would book it. We would just like book it off the bus and be like, all right, we're going to take our pictures. And then like by the time like everyone else got off the bus, they were starting to line up.
See, but that spot that we were at, like you said, there's lots of glacial lakes, but they only took us to one in particular, which was their largest. But even though it's the largest, it's not very big. We could have walked around it in 15 minutes, but we had to like use the restroom. They had like a gift shop. You know, Brittany and I like to find ornaments, so we were looking to see, okay, can we find an ornament here?
And
so
did you find one?
we did not there, unfortunately. But we could have walked around, so they did allow enough time if someone wanted to do that. You definitely could have. But this is another spot where we came across a squatty potty. In their national parks, they had squatty potties, no toilet paper. But I guess this is something that we should have mentioned in the tip section at the beginning just as well, is obviously I know every one of us here has been to Europe, but for any of our other listeners, public restrooms in Europe, they charge money for them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
They
So
really
this
do.
one was a free one, and in their national park, squatty. But if you didn't want to do that, they had a cafe. The cafe was quite nice. You know, you could get coffee or do something at the park, but you could only use their bathroom if you actually purchase something. So if you get like a coffee, one amongst a couple people, you know, you can go use the restrooms there. And those restrooms were not squatty potties. They were legitimate, real toilets that we're accustomed to, had toilet paper just as well. But yes, in the national parks in Montenegro, squatty potties.
And then our next stop was to actually see a bridge called the Tara Bridge, and it's a famous bridge in Montenegro, and it crosses over the Tara River, and the river has carved into the rock to make a really large gorge. They actually call it the Grand Canyon of Europe. It's so deep. It's the second deepest canyon.
They call it the Grand Canyon of Europe.
Yes.
Yeah.
They do.
It's not
Wow.
it's not as wide across, but it is equally as deep. That river has carved like the deepest gorge in Europe.
Oh, I just pulled up a picture of the Tara Bridge, and it's very beautiful.
It's a beautiful.
It reminds me of the Big Sur Bridge.
Yeah,
I
I
was
even
just
Thinking that, yeah.
I even told that to Brittany when we were there. I said it's kind of like Bigsby Bridge off of California Highway 1. So it was really nice. That bridge actually has a really interesting history without going too much into it. You know, during World War II, they were trying to fight off, I believe they said it was an Italian advance of Montenegro. And so they got in touch with the engineer who designed it, and they said, this is the only way that they can advance on us. Where can we blow just a portion of the bridge to not destroy the whole thing, but just so that they can't advance their tanks or anything like that? So he told them, they blew it up. Eventually the Italians came, captured the engineer, and they executed him on the bridge.
Oh, wow.
Kind of like a sad story, but I found it to be very, very interesting. Obviously, since then, they've reconnected the bridge, but I thought that was a really unique thing.
There was a lot of savage stories from my trip to Europe this year too.
Yeah.
A lot of crazy shit happened over there.
And that's one thing I want to say that I loved circling back around about guided tours. You know, when you go places on your own, you see things and they're really pretty and beautiful. But on these guided tours, your tour guides are so knowledgeable. They give you the in-depth history that makes it that much more intriguing and exciting to be like, wow, I'm actually here. This is really cool.
It's their job to know all about it and share it with you. So you learn a lot.
I just want to say one thing last about that bridge. They do have zip lining over the gorge to the other side.
Did you do it?
No, we didn't do it. She wore a dress that day.
Yeah, I did wear a dress that day. And so I wasn't prepared for it. But then we saw the people zip lining, and it wasn't like our experience in Honduras, where you have to stop the zip line itself. This one you just literally sit on and you go across and they catch you on the other side.
It was almost like a zip line hammock.
Yeah, it was like a hammock, really.
Yeah, but we didn't know that. And by the time we figured that out, seeing people go across, we knew if we started waiting in line, it would take too long from the time frame they told us that we're going to be ready to leave by, because we still were going to Dumator National Park, which was another one of Montenegro's national parks, which was really, really pretty.
And it's also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. This park has 18 glacial lakes, and we went to a lake called Black Lake, which is the largest and best known lake in the park.
Wow.
And the lake got its name because of all of the alpine trees surrounding it have created a reflection in the water to make the water appear black. And that's why the name of the lake is Black Lake.
Hence the name Montenegro, too, if you think about it. Black Mountains, Montenegro.
Oh, wow.
So they were saying that that's one of the history of how it got its name is, I think they said when the Venetians, if not the Venetians, someone else from areas of Europe were coming, and they said, wow, the trees are so green, they almost look like black from a distance. So the Black Lake, how the trees were reflecting on it for the color. So even though it's a glacial lake and they're usually clear, it looks dark because of the reflection. Very, very interesting.
I know, right? So which one did you like better, the Biogradsko National Park or Durmitor National Park?
Dumator.
Yeah.
I would agree.
It sounds nice, yeah.
It was
Both
more,
of them
it was
do,
more
though.
in the, I don't want to say it was more in the mountains, but you can actually see the mountain when you were there versus when you were at the first one.
It was pretty enclosed, and the trees were surrounding you so much that you couldn't see much more than just the tree surrounding you.
Did you do any hiking at either one?
We did not, but we did some grounding.
Yeah.
Yes, we did.
I was wondering about that earlier
Hugging
when
the
you were talking
trees?
about it.
Not necessarily hugging, but touching. We took off our shoes, put our feet in the water, if not in the water, just on the rocks, and did some spiritual grounding. Yeah, it was really, really nice.
And at Dumator, we asked the tour guide, are we following the path? Can we go off on our own? Because our tour group was 37 and walked slow as a group. So she was like, oh no, it's just a straight path. We're just going to hit the lakes just like straight up front. And then we're going to be back at the bus at this time. So Jamal and I took off and we got to spend extra time at the lake.
Did you guys meet anyone on this tour group that you connected with and became friends with like it was in China?
No, we did not. I mean, there was only one person, probably younger than 50, other than Jamal and I, and he was traveling with his mom and dad, and he was an only child. But we made like friends and
We got along
acquaintance.
with everybody, no doubt, but in terms of making like legitimate friends, people our age, like Kasha and Ryan, like we did in China, not necessarily so much, but everybody on our tour got along.
So then the next day, it was our last day exiting Montenegro before we entered Croatia. So our last stop in Montenegro was in Podgorica, which in this spot, we only stopped to tour the last king of Montenegro's palace. He had a lot of children. He fathered like, I think 12.
Wow.
I forgot how many kids they said he had. It was definitely a lot, though.
And he married each of his children off to like people that were high up. And so he was known.
Higher up European royalty.
Yeah. So he was known as the father-in-law of Europe because he had so many children and kept marrying them off to like royalty.
One of his daughters was Queen of Italy at one point.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so even though, interestingly enough, how I said about the Albanians, how they had one king first and last, same thing with Montenegro, just as well. So where we went was actually actually the palace of the first and last king of Montenegro. But as small as his monarchy was, if you consider first and last, he married his children off well into other royalty of Europe.
I was about to say the king of Montenegro did it right.
Yeah.
You know who probably had more children than him, though? The king of Swaziland.
How many did he have?
Oh my gosh.
He had so many wives, so I don't know how many children he had.
He had like 20-something wives, I think
Wow.
they said it was. Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah, they all had kids.
So that was one of the stops that we did. One of our last ones in Montenegro was seeing the palace of the king. But the coolest thing that we did on that day as we were driving to Croatia, because we were on our way to Dubrovnik, one of the last stops was in the Montenegrin city of Kotor. And it's along the Adriatic, beautiful seaside bay town. And this was actually one of the first times I feel like we got to go in ancient ruins that they had there. It was a walled off city that was really, really interesting and nice.
And by walled off city, we mean like from the base, from where the port is, all the way up into the mountains, the entire city is walled off.
Oh, yeah. I'm looking at a picture right now. That's very cool.
And so we didn't have enough time to hike up the wall. But let me tell you, if it had been a little bit cooler and we had more time, you know it would have been an easy day.
You should have just ran it.
Well, we didn't have
like
time.
I'm teasing.
Great wall.
I mean, no, I know, but we stopped there for lunch, and obviously we had time to kind of roam around. I think they gave us 2.5 hours, and we wanted to definitely eat because we hadn't eaten since breakfast. This was our designated stopping point. We still had a few hours longer to drive to get to Dubrovnik before dinner. So we definitely ate, but it was a really cool kind of medieval town, and I found it to be really, really interesting. I wish we had time to hike. So
Well, we did hike. Well, we did climb portions of the wall. So in the city, there were staircases where you can go up and explore around a little bit. So we did do that and do some lookouts, but we didn't climb all the way up because you could climb to the top if you wanted to.
Yeah, I really love these like medieval type of cities right on the water.
Yes.
Super old and right on the water.
And this is another UNESCO World Heritage Site as well. We came across many of them on this trip, which was really, really nice. I love always coming across UNESCO. And just for anyone who's listening who doesn't know, UNESCO stands for United Nations Educational, Scientific, Cultural Organization. And so basically they're sites that the UN and countries designate as having historical human importance and significance. So this one is one of them just as well. It was really, really interesting to see.
So if you guys go, I would definitely recommend hiking the wall. It's something I regret not being able to have time to do. So definitely do it. Let us know how it is.
And it definitely goes high up the mountain. It's a steep mountain. You know, where you enter kind of in at bay level to the city is nothing in comparison to how high that mountain goes up. And I think there was a church at the top, wasn't there, or something? Or was it a fort at the very top?
I think a fort at the top.
Yeah, but it goes high up the mountain.
That's cool.
And that was our last stop in Montenegro. So then we moved on and we drove to Croatia. Specifically, we went to Dubrovnik. And we had heard a few recommendations on what to do in Dubrovnik. And so one thing we were recommended to do was go to the beach. Another was to go to a bar called Buza Bar. And so we actually asked a local, hey, what do you recommend?
Well, sorry, we actually asked our driver because our driver was Croatian. And so we asked him, like, should we go to Buza Bar or what would you recommend?
And he said, neither. Go to the cave bar.
Cave bar.
And he's like, yeah, it's really close to the hotel too. So we get into the hotel and we look it up on our map and it was walking distance.
I knew I would love Croatia. That's on the top of my
Croatia was
travel
really, really
list.
nice.
And you guys went, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And it was probably no more than a 10-minute walk from our hotel. So we go down and you can't even really tell that there is a cave bar. So it's in a
Hidden in the cave.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hotel and restaurant area, and then they have like a small sign for the cave bar, and you have to take all of these elevators down because you're up on a cliff. So you take an elevator all the way down.
Seaside cliff.
And you enter and you walk out and total cave inside, and they have like one area where there is a glass bottom inside the cave as well.
And you can
it's-
see the water?
You can't see the water from inside the cave until you go to the cave entrance. But this was like a part where they they had carved out a section where they put glass over the flooring so you could see the natural flooring.
Because when we say a cave, so I mean, it's on a seaside cliff. They found this accidentally as they were doing construction of the hotel. So when they did, they said, well, let's just turn this into a bar. But when we say a cave, it's a real cave. There's stalagmites and stalactites in there. So that's where Brittany's saying they have the glass floor bottom where you can actually see that. So we went there, had a drink, but they also have an entrance that they made out to the water.
Yeah,
so
I'm looking at the pictures. It's so cool.
Yeah, and so we
It's
went there
amazing.
specifically for sunset. And one thing to know, and I didn't know this going in there, is you can bring your bathing suit, and from the deck where the cave entrance is, they have a sectioned off area where you can go swimming.
That's so cool.
Years ago, I went to Dubrovnik and I missed this. I had no idea it existed. I don't even know if it existed when I was
They just
there.
found this, he said it's like a year and a half old.
Fuck me.
Yeah. Did you hear a booze
Let's
bar
go
when
back.
you were there?
Let's go back, guys.
No, I mean, this is like 2010.
Because Booze Bar, where we heard a recommendation to go from somebody else, again, who was a tourist, not a local. It's a bar within the city walls of Dubrovnik that overlooks into the ocean, but it's really expensive because it's super touristy. I mean, I think it's going to be like $15 for a drink in there, like super, super expensive, whereas Cave Bar didn't have those type of prices.
Gotcha.
So that was like our first night in Croatia. We just went to Cave Bar, watched the sunset. It was really, really beautiful. But before we get on to the next day, were there any bets on a freak out?
We always bet on a freak out because it always happens.
Well, this one really wasn't one, but I'm just
we
curious,
didn't bet
was
on
there
where
any
and when it would
specific
happen.
dates?
It wasn't one, but still it's classified as one because you're going to talk about it, right?
Well, Brittany's under the impression that it is one, so that's really what it is.
Well, without further ado,
Let's
what the
hear
fuck
it.
happened? Tell us.
So this is our first morning in Dubrovnik, and we are at the breakfast buffet.
Wait.
Buffet.
Take us through the spread.
This one was my favorite.
Okay, let's hear what made it better than Albania.
I just think that there was more. Granted, we were at a larger hotel in a more touristy city, so they had more stations. But I would say the bacon was better, the potatoes were better. I would say the omelet station, in my opinion, was better. They did have a lot of good fruit. I will say this: Albania's coffee was a lot better than the Dubrovnik one that they had. We had to ask for decaf for Brittany several times. It took them a while. So in terms of service, but
That's your fault for drinking decaf.
They're probably like, what is this girl talking about?
I know they had to go make some in the back.
Yeah, they did.
When you say better, what do you mean by better? Like they have more options or the flavor wise it's better?
I think a combination of both. And again, that's just my opinion, but they kind of had a lot of the same stuff. I mean, in Europe, breakfast is really common, like deli meats and cheeses and breads. So they obviously had that section. They had fruits, so cut melons, watermelon, cantaloupe, apples, bananas, you name it. They
Fruit
had
ninja.
grapes. One thing I really enjoyed about it is all their stuff over there is pretty much grown organically. So you could actually kind of taste the difference, but that's getting on another subject altogether. But
So I feel like the breakfast was pretty much the same, except for the coffee was better in Albania. So for a more complete breakfast, I liked the Albanian breakfast buffet better, but that's just my personal opinion. They were very similar.
as much as I love the breakfast buffet, this is what kind of caused the freak out to some sort of extent. We were sitting down, eating, and using a fork. And let's not kid ourselves. I feel like we've all had an instance where we're using our fork and everything's not really on the fork, but we're too lazy to kind of like readjust it to make sure that it doesn't fall off.
It's just like dangling there on the brink.
Dangling, or you try to stick it, and what you tried to stick didn't really stick, but it's on almost as a spoon, but not, and just kind of too lazy to re-stick it and get it in there. So anyway, I'm putting the fork kind of in my mouth. I would say maybe in an awkward position. Didn't realize how far into my mouth it was. It's like took a bite, and one of the prongs of the fork chipped my freaking tooth. I was so I took a bite, felt it chip, started to freak out a little bit.
Oh, like
Oh,
what?
I don't even see. I don't know where it's
I
chipped.
feel it on my tongue.
Okay.
Is it one of your
what
front
does
two?
Yeah,
start to freak out a little bit?
front bottom right here.
Sound
Oh,
like-
it's the bottom. I was looking at the
Do you
top.
see it?
Well, you know what? I chipped my tooth on a Sugar Daddy, the candy, not a man when I first moved to San Diego. And I remember when I was younger, Mom told me that she chipped her tooth on a sugar daddy, and years later I did as well.
Well, anyway, so
but you chipped it on a fork.
I bit and chipped it, and obviously I felt it was jagged, it was sharp, and the way I bit down on it, I felt like, okay, clearly it's chipped, but I thought I cracked more of my tooth, and I thought like, shit, is this thing gonna like crumble on me throughout the day? Did only the top part come off? And so, yeah, I would say like I got really, really pissed. No one wants to chip their tooth on their vacation. Huh?
What does that look like when you start to freak out? What are some things that you say?
Were you yelling?
No. Oh, I know this one.
Did you say?
Brittany, we're going home.
Yeah, did you say you want to go home?
No, I did not say I want to go home. I did not say I want to go home. I only say that if we're close enough to home to be a real possibility.
So what are some things that you said?
I don't even remember.
Okay, I was about to say, this is Jamal's version. Brittany, let's hear the truth. What happened? No, I'm just kidding, Jamal.
So I see him sitting across from me, puts the fork in his mouth, bites down. He's like, oh my God, my tooth is just chipped. It's going to crumble on me on this vacation. What am I going to do? And then he's like, I'm just going to go back to the room right now. I don't even want to eat anything else. What if something else just makes my tooth worse? And he's having a meltdown. And he was going to see if there was any day, because we bought travel insurance to see if he could get his tooth fixed, but he didn't want to take any time off of our tour to go get it fixed.
Have any of you chipped your tooth during a trip?
No. Not during a trip,
All right, so until then, let's reserve judgment.
But I mean, like, I've chipped my tooth. And it was really noticeable, too.
Yeah, I know. But I mean, when you're on vacation. But anyway.
Did you ever get it fixed?
Oh,
Not
no.
yet.
I can't tell. I still can't.
Well, I can feel it.
So after Jamal's freak out, we had our day in Dubrovnik. And again, we started with a walking tour of the city. And Dubrovnik is also another walled city. It was built over 800 years ago. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and people still live within the city. Additionally, our tour guide for our city tour, she grew up in the walled city during the war. And so she remembers playing in the street. She remembers what it was like to be walled in and having no access to water or access to anything.
Wow, you couldn't get through the wall?
No, because they were like being invaded.
Well, it wasn't invaded. All the countries that we went to, minus Albania, were part of the former Federation of Yugoslavia, and they've all broken up now and are separate countries. So Montenegro, Croatia, Slovenia. We even drove through Bosnia at one point, even though we didn't go to Bosnia. That's part of it. So as they were breaking up, some of the now independent countries wanted to still be one. So they were shelling at one point Dubrovnik, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, which is also illegal to do, to ruin those things in acts of war. So people were pissed. They're like, whoa, you're not only bombing civilians on the inside, you're bombing a UNESCO World Heritage Site to get people out. Yeah, so she was talking about being there during the war, like in the early 90s when they were doing that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so the wall goes up to 83 feet in height, and so you can actually walk the walls of the city as well.
It's almost exactly a mile to walk the top of the walls.
Yeah, when I was looking online to see the distance, I think it's like around 6,300 or something.
Yeah, and this is just a small area off of the coast, and so there was like an entrance where there was previously a moat, and they had like a drawbridge to go over, and then once you enter that would be all blocked off. On the walls is where they would station for military and like for watch. So it was previously an active wall, and people lived inside of it, and so now they use it for like restaurants, but people do still live inside as well.
Also, they film a lot of Game of Thrones here in Dubrovnik.
Yeah, I bet.
Actually, as a matter of fact, one of the famous scenes, Shame, was filmed here at like one of the steps that they have within the city.
Oh,
Yeah,
interesting.
Yeah. So we weren't able to hike the wall in Kotor, but we were able to do it here in Dubrovnik.
And we did the entire wall. We did a
Easy day, huh?
full circle.
Actually, to an extent, it is easy because there's not a lot of elevation gain, but it was hard for one reason.
You had a chipped tooth?
Two reasons. It was humid as shit, man.
And there's no shade along the wall. There's absolutely no shade. You're 100% sun exposure. To get up to the walls, you have to climb all the steps. And then along the wall, there are some steps involved. But the hardest part was just the no shade. But, you know, we say it's an easy day. When we were buying our entrance to hike the walls, I saw that it included going up to the fort. And I was like,
Because they have a separate fort on a little rock peninsula headed out to, also filmed for Game of Thrones, FYI to anybody listening.
It's the Red
likes Game of
Keep
Thrones.
in the fort. The fort's the Red Keep. So I was like, Jamal, look, we got to go hike up to the fort because it's already included in our price and we don't want to waste our money. Because to hike the walls, it was 200 kuna, which equated to about $30 US.
Per person?
Per person.
Not included with Gate1?
No. They included the tour of the city. You can get into the city for free, but if you want to go up and hike the walls or the fort, they charge you for that.
How long did you have in Dubrovnik?
We had the whole day. So
okay.
Our guided tour, which was done by, again, a local who actually lives within the city walls, not just lives in Dubrovnik on the outside. She literally lives within the walls. That was only half a day, and we were spending the night there that night as well. So we had all the time in the world to do what we wanted to afterwards for the rest of the day.
And our guide actually told us how to get back to the hotel by taking the local bus if we didn't want to go back with the tour. So that's what we did.
Yeah, because where they have the old city of Dubrovnik, the walled off area, there's only one hotel in the area, which I think is like a Hilton. So if anybody's going to be going on their own or even with a guided tour company, you're going to be about 5 to 6 miles away from the city center of the walls itself. So we stayed behind, hiked the walls, took a bus back to the hotel
after we hiked the fort. And so on my Instagram, I posted a video of Jamal walking up the steps saying, I thought this was going to be an easy day as we're hiking up the fort.
Because that was harder than the walls itself. Because like Brittany said, the walls are only at its highest point 83 feet high. So yes, it does make a square, but it's not like an even square. So there is some up down, but really 83 feet is not bad. But hiking from water level up several hundred feet of stairs into the fort that Brittany said was included in the ticket price, that was more the hard part. But it was so humid without being too gross when we got back to the hotel. Like
swamp ass.
Yes.
More than that.
But beyond that, beyond just me, like Brittany's romper was soaked.
There was
our
no-
clothes were soaked. All of our clothing was wet.
I was there in April 2010 and it was beautiful.
Lucky you.
But I didn't walk the wall.
But the walls in the fort gave panoramic views of the city, of the coastline, of just everything. And it was so worth it. It was one of my favorite days, even though it was so hot.
All those views that are so hard to get to are always worth it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then
No, it was
after
really nice.
It's a metaphor for life.
Anyone who goes definitely do the
character.
walls. They definitely do charge a lot for it, but you can definitely see more of the view, like seeing into the city, seeing the coast. It's really nice and worth it.
And then after we went back to our hotel, we got ready for dinner and we took a boat on the Adriatic looking at Dubrovnik. And so it took us to a beach that looked out to the city.
The old city.
The old city. And so it was really nice.
Yeah, so this was actually with Gate1 and the guided tours. You know, the tours are included, but sometimes they have additional add-ons that you pay for. So we paid for this. It was a sunset cruise that took us to a beach that was maybe a couple miles away from the old city, but we had a view of it. So we got to watch sunset on the beach at a restaurant and having dinner, which was really, really nice. And by that time, it had definitely cooled down a lot and the mosquitoes were out and about.
After dinner, we did get into the water at that beach. And it was really nice again.
You brought your swimsuits with you and
No, we got up to our knees.
okay.
We didn't get in.
Was the water warm or cold?
It was perfect.
Yeah, it's perfect.
I mean, it's
Nice.
it's Mediterranean water. It's perfect.
Yeah.
So then that was our last day in Dubrovnik. We were still in Croatia, but we had to drive to Split. And so Jamal did say that we did have to cross into Bosnia.
Bosnia.
We did have to drive through Bosnia because Croatia is actually a split country where there's a divide where there's 8 miles of the coast that's Bosnia before it becomes Croatia again.
Really?
I did that.
Oh, I can see that on the map.
But I drove from Split to Dubrovnik on an overnight train, and they came like ravaging through the train, waking everyone up and scaring the shit out of everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you needed passports for a
Passports.
security check.
So even though you're in the same country, you have to cross over
Wow.
and then go through like a border control.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it is odd, but, you know, I equate it to thinking of the rest of the United States and Alaska. Granted, it's not that short of a distance, but it's still part of the United States that doesn't touch. Croatia is kind of the same thing, but Bosnia only has that like 8 miles of
Yeah, it's
coastline
so
that you have to drive
weird.
through to get
It's
to
like
it.
the whole thing, just a tiny little smidge.
Yeah.
So we drove to Split, and in Split, we did a tour of Old Town and Diocletian's Palace. And this was actually my favorite tour that we took. So I'm going to give you guys
Why?
a little
Mine too.
information about it. So Split's on the water. There's a water promenade, and then there's a big palace. And so the ruler of the palace actually had killed people to get to the very top.
Diocletian was a Roman emperor, but he retired. But in Rome, there really is no retirement. Even if you retire, people think you're going to come back, take over. So he was paranoid for his life. So he built this palace.
So he built this palace, and it's 2 stories. And he builds the bottom floor to replicate the top floor. In the bottom floor, no one lives there. There's nothing there. And part of it is flooded by the ocean. So he lives on the top floor, which exactly mimics the bottom floor. And he is so paranoid because he's retired. He thinks people are going to kill him. So he starts killing people around him in the village that are questioning his status, declares himself immortal. So when people are saying, like, is he really immortal? He's questioning them and executing them. And he's pretty much like has an entire village hating him. And it's just him, his wife, his daughter, and then like 100 guards that are guarding this palace.
Who live within the palace itself.
Okay.
And so he gets so paranoid to the point that he ends up executing his wife and daughter outside of the palace on the square. And he even builds himself a crypt on the palace grounds. So he ends up dying about 2 weeks later, and they don't know what happened. They don't know if the guards just were like, well, if he's willing to execute his wife and daughter, then he's willing to execute. Yeah, he's going to do this to us. So he ends up dying. They put his body in the crypt, and people from the village come and they're like, how did this happen? He said he's immortal. So they say, okay, we're going to check his pulse. They check his pulse. They realize he's dead, and they throw his body out to sea. And so everyone in the surrounding village that hates him goes to live in the palace, and as kind of like a fuck you, like, fuck you. So
nice.
Now that...
So intense.
It was a really interesting story.
So now 700 people have moved into this palace. So what did they do about toilets? Well, what they did before was they would poop on the second floor and it would drop into the first floor.
Which there was water that was supposed to
from the
flood
ocean.
That area anyway.
So they were hoping for the ocean current to take in and out the urine and feces. Well, what happens when there's 100 people living and then 700 people move in?
A lot more shit.
There's a lot more shit. So the entire bottom floor fills to the brim up to the second story with shit. And they realize they can't shit in it anymore. So they stop shitting it and no one does anything about it.
The current couldn't get it?
No. Like,
the water has since receded. Where the water used to come up in the palace and flood the bottom purposely by design, just the sea level line has actually changed. So it's not at that point anymore. They have like a street promenade on the outside, so no water's coming to wash it or anything like that.
No one's smelling this?
I mean, I don't know what they were doing. So
It's better.
I wonder how long it took for it to fill up.
So it's
gets
filled.
better.
It's 100% filled. And now they declare this a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So they start...
Because people still live in there to this day.
So
in
they
this
start...
old town
And
area.
still shit in it?
Well,
No,
not
no.
like that anymore. So they realize that there's a problem. And before it's a World Heritage Site, they get little kids to start piling out pounds of the shit. But then UNESCO hears about it, and like the university, I think, of...
They said Minnesota, I think it was.
excavates tons and tons and tons of shit out of there. There's petrified shit all over the place.
Petrified shit.
Literally, it's petrified.
Means like it's been frozen and solid, and it's preserving, it's actually preserving the ruins. So people that actually live there are unwilling to get all of this crap removed, because if you own the top, you own everything underneath it.
According to Croatian law.
And they're unwilling to get it removed because they're afraid if they remove all of this crap that their bottom floor is going to fall in.
So a lot of universities, University of Michigan, obviously UNESCO, they've actually done some of the excavation of it. So our tour guide was telling us, do you notice how good these walls look down here compared to like up there? It's because we're standing up until maybe 60 years ago. This was really all filled with solidified feces, shit, and whatnot. They've since taken it out, but she took us to one area where there's actually still a little tucked in area that's roped off. And she said, do you see this rope right here? She said this is actually a borderline of somebody's house. You put this rope here and you can see everything that's back here. She's like, this is actually what some of the petrified feces look like. the people above, under Croatian law, they own what's below their home. So they don't want anybody digging this because they think if they dig it, their top is going to crumble down. So there's an area in the bottom level where you can actually see it.
Did it smell?
No, we asked why it smelled, and then she was like, we're sponsored by Glade. They do spray it so it doesn't smell.
Did you guys smell anything?
No, not
we
at
didn't.
all. And the people that still live in it are direct descendants of the original people that moved into the palace when Diocletian died. They've since passed this down generation to generation. So they didn't have all these rooms. People have built it up. Really, really interesting story. But side note, they filmed some scenes from Game of Thrones here just as well for any Game of Thrones fans. As a matter of fact, the scene where she keeps the dragons in the dark, kind of tied up, and Tyrion goes in and is like, don't eat the help. Does anyone remember that?
Yeah.
Nah, I wasn't a watcher.
Oh, okay. Well, they filmed that scene there and several other things. But Split was actually really cool, especially the palace. Very interesting.
We went out for dinner that night after Jamal and I did the city tour. We went back to our hotel, and then we walked back out to the city, and we went to a place. It was called Bucamora for pizza, and all they sell is pizza. We had the best pizza I've ever had. It was a white sauce with mushrooms and truffles, and it was so good. And while we were there for lunch, we actually ate at an authentic place called FIFA for lunch.
And what kind of food was on the menu at FIFA?
So a lot of goulashes. I had some gnocchi with goulash sauce almost. And
Describe a goulash.
Like a thick stew,
Like,
but
yeah,
just
like a-
really
Oh, okay.
meat and then the sauce.
And then Jamal had some escalope for dinner.
Some
or for
what?
lunch.
Escalope.
What is that?
It's pounded out like either chicken, pork, or beef, really thin. I had pork, and it had a mushroom sauce with it. And what did it come with on the side? Oh, I got French fries on the side with it. Yeah.
Sounds good.
So that is some of the local cuisine. So we did have that for lunch on the recommendation of our tour guide. But like Brittany said, Boca Mora, honestly, some of the best pizza I've ever had in my life.
How about
truffle
any
pizza.
Middle Eastern food or Greek food? Falafel, shawarma?
We saw a lot of it there. We just didn't try it.
Oh, okay. So it was prevalent.
Absolutely.
So outside of the golden gates of Diocletian's palace, there was a big statue, and it was of Gregory of Nin. And he was a Croatian bishop who strongly opposed the Pope because during this time that he was alive, Mass was only offered in Latin. And he believed that the services should be offered in their native language.
Because most people didn't understand Latin just as well.
He got it so that services were in their native Croatian language. And so people loved him so much, they started rubbing his toe for good luck. And so his toe on the statue is now gold. And eventually, I think when the Italians took over, they cut his statue into 5 and buried it and took it down.
Is it just the toe?
No. And
No,
then
they have a full statue of him still, but they've
So then they dug it back up and they put it together, and they put the golden toe right outside of the golden gates of Diocletian Palace. So we went and rubbed the toe.
So it's a statue
can
form,
touch it?
and it's it's believed to bring good luck. So we rubbed his toe for good luck.
Nice. How big was it?
Big toe. It's a big statue. So after Split, we were still going to be in Croatia, but we actually drove to Plitvice National Park. And I didn't even know how to pronounce this. I'm still probably not pronouncing it right, but I've known of this place. If you Google Croatian lakes, this is going to come up. I guarantee you anyone who's on Instagram has seen it before. And it's also a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and again, still in Croatia. Do you want to tell them what the lakes are, Brittany?
Yeah, there are 16 lakes, and they're all interconnected by cascading waterfalls. So
it's so
super
pretty.
beautiful.
Did you just Google that?
Yes, that's gorgeous.
Once we got there, they said that we could have like a tour with our guide, and we asked if we could just go alone because it just so happened that our hotel was inside the national park and very easy to get to. And we weren't going anywhere for the night, so Jamal and I just took off on our own. And our tour group was only going to explore one section of the park, and Jamal and I wanted to explore all of the sections, so we went off on our own. And when you first walk down, so the lakes are far down, and you have to hike down to get down there, which means you also have to hike out as well. You get the first glimpse of the lakes, and everyone's piling up for those first pictures. Everyone's piling up to like see the biggest waterfall. And Jamal and I were like, the waterfall doesn't really look super impressive during this season that we went. So we took a quick look at it, but we passed by, and the farther and farther that we went, the more impressive impressive it became. And the less people were on the trail. So there were parts that we had alone as well. The water was tinges of blue, turquoise, green. Some parts even look a little bit darker, so they're like blue, almost gray. But overall, so beautiful.
I mean, really clear. You could see the fish in there. You could see the fallen foliage of the trees, really clear and beautiful. But one of the reasons why Brittany and I did it alone is because when we were about to start our tour, again, our local tour guide stood us in front of a map and said, okay, this is what the park looked like. This is what we're going to explore. And we were only going to explore the 2 lower lakes, which are the largest. And yes, you could see like a few waterfalls, but the more you go up the levels of the 16 interconnecting lakes, that's when you can actually see more of the waterfalls themselves.
And the smaller lakes.
And the smaller lakes. So it was really cool because the entire pathway that's there is made like of a little wooden bridge that's just a few feet above the water. So really
so
pretty,
cool.
really
And there's
interesting.
there's not a lot of railing. So if you wanted to reach over and feel the water, you can. And be careful because if you're walking fast, you don't want to fall off.
But no, this might have been my favorite day. I'm still unsure what I would say, but this one was really nice.
Nice.
And then if you hike up from entrance 1 to entrance 3, there is a shuttle bus that will take you back to the front, or you can hike the entire loop if you wanted to yourself. So you have different options of how far you want to go and where you can end. Our last stop in Croatia was in Opatija for ice cream, and it was just a little seaside town with resorts. It was on the north end of the Adriatic Coast, and this town is actually famous for its beaches and picturesque surroundings. And that was all we did before crossing the border into Slovenia.
When we went into Slovenia, the first stop that we were going to do was the Postojana caves. So the Postojana caves are the largest show caves in Europe. And by show cave, that means just available for the public to go in, see, explore, etc. The largest caves in Europe are still actually in Slovenia just as well. They're just not available to the public.
And it's so big that you actually have to get on a train, and you're on a 10-minute train ride through the cave system to get to where the cave tour starts.
I actually felt like I was on a Disneyland ride or something like Big Thunder Mountain. Like we were in the cave on a train. It takes you literally 10 minutes driving in, and obviously see stalagmites, stalactites along the way.
And Jamal and I have done several caves in the past, and we're like, okay, how different can this be? But every time we go into a new cave system, we're like, wow, this is impressive. And that was exactly how we felt. This also had a salamander called an olm. It's an aquatic salamander that's only found in European caves, and it sleeps, eats, and breeds underwater. It was crazy to see too.
If you had to take a 10-minute train ride just to get there, imagine the man who walked there to figure out that that was even there.
Yeah.
What the fuck? Like, at what point do you just keep going or just turn
like
back?
I said, on the train ride, you can still see stalagmites, stalactites, a lot of interesting formations. So it was just a big opening. Like it does go, the cave system's 15 miles long.
So funny that you say that, Zaina. The guy that found it became their first tour guide of the cave system.
Before he got the funds to build a train.
Yeah.
And how did these cave systems first get created?
There's a river that's right by it. I forgot the name of the river, but it's right by the cave system. And they are limestone rock. And limestone, obviously, the water will come through. As it comes through, it builds calcium deposits and other types of minerals. And so when it drips through the rocks, that's what over time creates the buildup for the stalagmites, stalactites. So, I mean, these have taken obviously hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years to form.
So from the caves, we drove to Bled, and our hotel was located on Lake Bled. And on Lake Bled, there's an island in the middle, which houses a church. And then on the cliffs, there is a castle. So it was just very, very beautiful. We had views from our hotel, the breakfast buffet, there was views. And
How
then
was the food though?
Walk us through the spread.
This one was just okay.
it was just okay, but the views made it beautiful and perfect. And then
Yep. Sorry, before you continue on, Bled is actually in the Alps. So it's an alpine lake, really foresty, really green. You know, we said Montenegro was really green. So was Slovenia. What we saw, Slovenia was really, really pretty in that sense just as well.
And so once we got to Bled, it was was later in the afternoon, and we had been having tons of authentic cuisine the entire trip. So we actually went out to Chinese food for dinner.
Chinese food in Bled, Slovenia.
Yes. And it was run by an authentic Chinese family. And I wouldn't say it was the best Chinese food I've ever had, but for that area, it was really good.
For being in Slovenia and probably the ingredients that they have access to out there, like Brittany said, it's not the best Chinese food, but for what it was there, it was delicious.
Was there a lot of Chinese food, or was that just random?
It was just random.
It was kind of random, yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of random. We loved it so much we ate there twice, as a matter of fact.
What did you order?
The first night...
We got egg rolls, and then we ended up getting a noodle and veggie dish, as well as...
It was like a veggie chow mein.
And then we got some sweet and sour pork.
Yum.
We got sweet and sour pork. The second night, Zaina, guess what we got?
Duck.
I got a moment. I was like, what would be so surprising?
We got some duck. Well, we looked for other places to eat, and we were going to do a different pizza place that was there, without getting too far off on the subject of Bled right now. But that place we went to for lunch, and then we got there and we ordered the pizza, and it's not just a pizza parlor. He told us, oh, we don't do pizza today. I'm like, okay. So we left and we're like, what else are we going to eat? So we went back to Chinese and we got the duck that day.
So the hotel we stayed at was actually called Park Hotel, and it's famous for its cream cake. And they sell, like in the high season, up to like 3,500 slices per day.
Wow.
So we were like,
what is it? Describe it.
It's 4 layers. It's a flaky bottom crust.
Okay.
And
like
then-
a phyllo dough kind of thing?
But a little bit thicker. I don't want to call it a graham cracker, but it definitely had a little bit more of that thickness and texture, not necessarily of that of a phyllo.
And then it had like a layer of one type of cream, and then it had a smaller layer of another type of cream, and then it had the same crust on the top as well. So it was delicious.
So we ate that overlooking the lake. It was just really beautiful. We had that at night. It was nice.
And
it was after
at night, the
dessert.
castle on the cliff is lit up. So it was a great view.
That's awesome.
It's just making me so excited for Thanksgiving. When I hear you talking about that stuff.
And that was all we did the first day in Bled. But then the second day, this was actually a free day. And we decided to do the optional tour because there's no Disneyland in Slovenia.
Oh, bummer.
So we did the city tour, and the island that I talked about in the middle of the lake, we took a boat out there called a Plutna, and this guy literally rows us himself. He just has both arms out with the oars, and he's just rowing, and he looks so intense doing it.
Was he buff?
Yeah,
I was just thinking that. I was like, what did his biceps look like?
he was buff, and then one of the guys on the boat who was just sitting there was like, guess you don't gotta go to the gym.
What a witty remark.
I know, right?
So we get to the island, and once you get to the island, there's 99 steps that you have to climb up to get to the church that's there. So immediately, if
No
you
big
don't, we're like, okay. So we climbed up.
It wasn't that bad at all, actually. But the lake is really nice, beautiful blue color just as well. And again, it has the island on it that has the church. The church is actually called the Pilgrimage Church of the Assumption of Mary. So it's a church dedicated to the Virgin Mary. And within the church, you can actually ring the bell. So at the altar, they have the rope for the bell, and you can ring it. So if you ring it 3 times and make a wish, it's supposed to obviously make it true. So we got to ring the bell. And
What'd you guys wish for?
I can't tell you. Won't come true, Kim.
I did that in Spain. They had something where you get to ring the bell.
And so there's
And
a
a
tradition. This church is still working, so they use it for mass still, and they also use it for weddings. So it's good luck if the groom carries his bride all the way up all of those steps, and they go and make a wish.
You know who
Together.
wouldn't have a problem carrying his bride up?
The guy rowing the boat.
Yes. Yes.
He's got the muscles.
Yes, he does.
Yeah, so after we did the island and the church there, the tour continued on. We went to Lake Bohinj. I can't pronounce it. I'm going to spell it for everybody. It's spelled Bohinj. And again, it's just another alpine resort town. It has a glacial lake in front of it, but it's located within a Slovenian national park. The park's name is Triglav, and it's the largest permanent lake in Slovenia. And they have a lot of skiing around in that area too. It's really, really nice alpine town just as well. Real scenic beauty in Slovenia.
Yeah,
It's Bojen.
Bojen. Thank you.
Thank you, Wikipedia.
Yes.
and I took off my shoes and I put my my feet in the water, and it was really nice. The water was cold.
Well, it was raining on us at that point, too.
Yeah, we did hit a little rain, but it was so beautiful and so picturesque. And then Jamal and I had actually wanted to eat at the castle because there's a restaurant on the top, and we hadn't. The reason we didn't was because the final night there was a farewell reception at the Bled Castle, so we went up for that, and it had views from the castle down onto the lake. You could see our hotel and everything, and it was
this put on by Gate1?
This
Yes.
was.
And what was it like? Did they have booze?
You can get a glass of wine.
Just
white
one?
Yeah.
I mean, you've been on a Gate1, Kim. You know, like the booze is included for one if you want more. It's kind of like
I've heard in Africa it was a lot different.
Well, we did some booze cruises that were part of the tours that were a little bit different. That weren't included with the dinners necessarily. So that's where the difference comes into play.
It's a 400-foot cliff, and that's what the castle's on top of.
Nice.
Overlooking the lake.
And it was a perfect place to end our tour.
Very nice.
So that pretty much sums up our trip, but the last portion I want to talk about is cost. So just
That's a long trip, 12 days. So how much does a 12-day trip on a guided tour
Okay, so
end
I'm
up
going
cost?
to break it down with how much we paid for the tour itself. Again, our tour includes flights, hotels, transportation, entrance to the national parks, and activities like the city tours, all breakfasts, some lunches, few dinners, and this also included what we paid for the optional tours as well. For the both of us, we paid $4,739. And for everything else, souvenirs, meals that were not included, we even included our Lyft and taxis to and from our airports, buses, tips for guides, drinks, and massages. We spent $1,235.92. So for a grand total, we spent, for the both of us, $5,974.92.
Nice. About a little less than $3,000 each for a 12-day adventure.
Yeah.
All expenses paid.
Yeah,
Exactly.
And a lot of the expenses that were on our own was, yes, you're on vacation, you want to spoil yourself, but we had those massages, which kind of added up. You guys are aware we love to buy Christmas ornaments in each city that we're at, and sometimes the good ones are $20 to $30. So, I mean, a lot of people could hear that, and I don't think it's that bad. I know for some people they may think like, oh, that's expensive, but in terms of what we chose to spend out of pocket outside of the guided tour, we could have definitely eaten at cheaper places and not gotten those souvenirs, and it's definitely a lot more manageable for people.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a pretty good deal to me.
Yeah.
Especially, I don't know if we ever mentioned this on our last one, but with Gate1, if you buy your trip in advance, you can make payments on it. So that lightens the burden of the cost. And you guys got this one on sale, didn't you?
We did get it on sale. It was buy one, get one half off, but that half off only included the land portion, not the airfare portion of it.
The other thing about Gate1 is if you pay cash, they give you like a cash discount.
Yeah, we also paid cash, so we had a 5% cash discount.
The rate that you give, does that include the 5% discount?
Yes, it does.
Keep your eye on those sales. Pay in cash.
All right. Any like last minute thoughts?
My last thought is everyone spoke English in
Nice.
every single country we went to.
Good English.
Really good
decent
Really good
English.
English. And so that wasn't something I was necessarily expecting. Actually, in
No.
Montenegro, they say that English is taught as their second language, and they're required to learn 3 languages in Montenegro: Montenegrin, English, and then one language of their choice.
Oh, wow. All right, guys.
Thank you guys so much for listening to this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed touring along the Adriatic Coast with Jamal and Brittany.
Please subscribe to our podcast, leave a review, tell us what you'd like, and tune in every Travel Tuesday for new episodes.
And if you aren't already, make sure you're following us on Instagram at Travel Squad Podcast.
Pack your bags because next week we are exploring Denver, Colorado. Yeah.
Jamal's birthday trip.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.
Bye.